everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video review, and today we're going to be doing Justice League International, issue number 1. Take a look at this comic cover right here. Now, with everything that's coming out in September with the relaunch, Justice League International is one of the comics I'm most curious about where the direction is going to be taken with it. The reason why I say that is because, well, Justice League International traditionally isn't your normal superhero comic. In its original incarnation back in the late 80s, early 90s, Justice League International was more of a sitcom-like comic. It wasn't about huge superhero story arcs fighting against evil. It was more about character development, witty comebacks towards each other, and, well, just good old-fashioned comedy. The cast worked well together, and it was, as I said, like a sitcom. And it worked. The comic was incredibly successful. Eventually it got cancelled and we went back to the status quo for the Justice League, but throughout the years there have been Justice League International tribute comics like I Can't Believe It's Not Justice League, or the team formerly known as Justice League, and then a resurgence in popularity with the Justice League Generation Lost, and of course Booster Gold's comic, who was a prominent member of the Justice League International. So, what I'm trying to get at is this, is exactly what tone will this comic have? Will it be a serious Justice League International that we saw with Justice League Generation Lost? Or will it go back to its roots and be more of a sitcom, comedy-based comic? Well, you're just going to have to wait and see. So let's dig into issue number 1 of Justice League International. Now, first and foremost, before going into this, you have to know that from what it seems, there was no Justice League International before this. This is the origins of the team, the start, the original incarnation. So I guess everything beforehand is not considered canon. Which does raise a few questions about like Blue Beetle, Maxwell Lord, so on and so forth, but I'm not going to bother questioning it. It's just going to hurt my mind. So this is the start of the Justice League International, and it is set in the present day. And the reason why this team is being formed is because the UN needs to change things up. They need to have their own superhero team, but one they can control, because apparently the normal Justice League answers to no one. And of course they really shouldn't. So they decide to band together a team that they can control, one that they can kind of mastermind as puppets. Maybe that's a little bit to an extreme, but basically they say they can take credit for their victories and blame them for their losses. So, what do? They get what they think is the most controllable and best superheroes from their individual nations. As you can see here, this is the roster for the Justice League. You got Booster Gold as its leader, Red Rocket, Fire, Ice, you got Guy Gardner as the Green Lantern, Vixen, and then you got two characters right here. General Iron, which I know has shown up before, but I really don't have too much information on him. And a character that I am completely new to, Gondavia, I believe that's how you pronounce her name. Pardon me, my pronunciation sucks, but as you guys know if you watch my videos, my pronunciation sucks. She might be a new character, she might have shown up previously, whatever the case. She's there. Which is interesting enough, because if you looked at the original pictures from the Justice League International announcement, she wasn't there and there was someone else. Apparently some girl from Booster Gold's comic before Flashpoint, or, well, during Flashpoint. But this is the Justice League team that they decided to create. Again, Booster Gold as leader, and all of them represent a different nation. Batman, however, isn't officially a member of the team. I mean, he's part of the team, but not by UN standards. He's just mostly on it to keep a watch on it. Each of them represent, like, Russia, Brazil, China, Africa, space, Norway, England, and Booster Gold's debatable because apparently he's Canadian now. So does he represent Canada or America? I don't know. Anyways, that's the team. So, the team starts off, and they really don't like each other. Guy Gardner doesn't respect Booster Gold. Booster Gold really doesn't know how to handle the team. The blonde chick, Gondavia, is too busy checking out Booster Gold. Red Rocket and Iron General are bickering with each other. So, the team's not really working that well, but they're thrusted into their first mission. What would that mission be? Well, there's a bunch of researchers that are missing in Peru, and the Justice League has to go find them and save them. Batman, of course, is joining along the way, but Guy Gardner decides to bugger out because, again, he doesn't like Booster Gold. So the team goes to Peru, and they face off against some hideous elemental Earth-type constructs beings who aren't alive, but apparently are incredibly dangerous. And eventually they find out that there is something bigger behind all this than just those Earth elemental constructs. What could they be? Well, you're just going to have to read and see. Let's get into the good, the bad, and whether or not you should get it. Good. Well, I have to say the decisions that they made for the team are, for the most part, I like. Booster Gold has to be on the team because, well, he's Booster Gold. He's the man. I like how Fire and Ice are on the team because they are, of course, classics from the original team. And one could argue Red Rocket, too, and Guy Gardner. I've always liked the concept of Red Rocket, and I also like Vixen. I think she's a great character. The Iron General is what you call him, I believe. I'm new to, but for the most part, I like the fact that there's someone representing Asia, specifically China, and then this character is the only one I'm not too sure on because I'm new to her. Gonavia? I don't know. It sounds like gonorrhea. Hopefully someone can help me with the pronunciation. And of course, Batman on the team because, well, I love Batman. He's my favorite. So for the most part, I like the team and I like the balance that they have. The witty remarks between the two are not, between all of them are nice. It's not full-fledged, in-your-face comedy like the previous Justice League comic, but there is some witty bickering back and forth. I feel as though Dan Jurgens, who is writing this, and if you don't know who Dan Jurgens is, he's well known for handling Superman during the early 90s, the Death of Superman story arc, probably most noticeably, but also other stuff beforehand. Creating Booster Gold, handling Booster Gold, among other things. But Dan Jurgens does a good job at finding that balance between witty remarks and comedy, and also with action, because although there is some nice little clever comedy dialogue going on between the characters, it is very much the beginning of a story, and there's action going on. So I do like the fact that they find the balance between that, because as much as I like the original Justice League International, sometimes the comedy was too overbearing, but at the same time, Justice League Generation Lost was a little too serious. So this seems to have more of a fun tone to it while still being action-based. I also like the fact that this issue is very accessible to new readers and to older readers alike. It basically sets a groundwork, who's a team, every member is shown there, they all get a say, they all get to do something, and you get a feel of all their personalities. A lot of people were complaining about the Justice League issue #1 done by Geoff Johns and Jim Lee. And probably one of the biggest complaints is you only really get to see 4 of the Justice League members. And in that, you only really get to see interactions between 2, Hal Jordan and Bruce Wayne. My argument for that is they're doing an overall story, so that each character gets development, and eventually the story will work better collected in issues. With this, I think people will not be upset, because everyone right there is shown. They get to fight, they get their say, they get their moment in the limelight, so that's good. Bad. It felt like a very short issue. I know it has the same issue number of page count that all the other issues have, but it feels very rushed and fast. I feel like we're getting into things way too quickly. I like how every character was introduced and they get their moments, but it's just like we're being thrusted right into this. It doesn't give time for everything to sink in. In addition to that, it would have been nice if Guy actually stayed on the team rather than buggered off and did whatever he did. He's probably too busy going to a strip joint and getting drunk because, you know, it's Guy. And for the most part, I do like the character redesigns for the costumes, but there's a few of them that I don't like. Fire and Ice I am fine with. I like their costume designs, as well as Red Rocket and the Iron General. Batman I'm okay with. But Vixen's, I prefer her previous costume. I thought it looked good, and I thought it stood out. And Booster Gold's previous costume was perfect. I don't see why they had to change it. It looks too extreme-ish? I don't know. It looks like it's an extreme costume back in Extreme Justice. But I would have preferred the previous Booster costume. You know what's really throwing me off about it is if you look at the top, there is a clear area on the forehead where it's showing, and the mask is not complete. Maybe it's also because Skeets isn't there, but to be fair, Skeets was never in Justice League International. Booster shut him down while he went on the team. On the whole, whether or not you should pick it up. Well, fans of old Justice League they'll like this. Fans that want to get into Justice League they're going to like this. This was overall a good story. It did everything that needed to be done, set the groundwork, introduced all the characters, created a threat, had good comedy into it. I mean, the only things I had problems with really weren't big things, and they were more or less personal preference. People out there could love Vixen's and Booster Gold's costume. And again, that's just personal preference. And I'm sure it'll grow on me eventually. At least Boosters will. Vixen's might take a little bit more time. But the fact of the matter is, this did a good job as a first issue. Well done, and I do recommend it to people that want a secondary Justice League title or are fans of Justice League International in general. If people are worried about this comic, don't be. Because although we don't get Keith Giffen on it, we do get Dan Jurgens. And Dan Jurgens always pulls out good work. The only times he's ever pulled out bad work was Zero Hour, and I do not blame him for that. That was more editorial stuff, but Justice League International was good. You know, I'm staying positive with this relaunch for the most part. And, of course, there's stuff that I am upset about, but DC has done a good job pulling out good comics. If you can accept change and move past the change, you'll realize that these comics are actually coming out really nicely. So I'm eager to see how things go on with the rest of the comic. There is one other thing that did bother me, and I kind of forgot to say this. Where's Maxwell Lord? I think Maxwell Lord, even if his character gets a complete overhaul, his continuity changes, he never turned evil, whatever, he has to be part of the JLI in some way. I also would like to see some other members thrown in there. Mr. Miracle would be nice. Maybe he's alive in this relaunch. I'm talking about Scott Free. Big Barda would be nice to see in here. And as much as I would like Ted Kord to be in there, I know he's not because they're going to focus on one Blue Beetle. But for the most part, this is a good issue. I do recommend it. Especially if people are skeptic on it, they'll enjoy it. So with that said, this is Andrew saying peace out for now.